They say memory fades with age, but I remember the weight of that envelope like it was yesterday. 2 crisp $100 bills handed to me across my own kitchen table on Christmas morning with a smile that didn't quite reach my son's eyes. "Don't spend it all at once, Mom," Richard said, his voice carrying that careful patience people use with children or the very old. I stood there, flour still dusting my apron from the cinnamon rolls I'd been making since dawn, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet, just a strange cold clarity, like ice forming over still water. I was 72 years old. I'd been a widow for 8 years, and for the past 3 of those years I had been paying my son's mortgage. My name is Dorothy Brennan. I live in a small ranch house in Meridian, Idaho, the kind of place where neighbors still wave and the library ladies know your name. After my husband, James, died, I learned to live on less. His pension covered the basics, my small savings handled emergencies, and I had gotten used to store-brand coffee and mending clothes instead of replacing them. Richard moved to Boise 5 years ago, got himself a job at some tech company, married a woman named Vanessa who wore clothes with labels I couldn't pronounce. They bought a house in one of those new developments where every lawn looks the same and the HOA fines you for leaving your garbage cans out too long. I was proud of him. That's what mothers do, isn't it? We're proud even when we're not sure why. 3 years ago, Richard called on a Tuesday evening. His voice was tight, stressed in a way I hadn't heard since he was in college facing finals. "Mom, I need to ask you something. It's temporary, I swear." The company was restructuring. His position was safe, but the commissions had dried up. Vanessa's boutique marketing business was still finding clients. The mortgage was $2,800 a month, and they were 2 months behind. "Just until we get back on our feet," he said. 3 months, maybe 4. I looked at my bank statement that night. James had been careful with money, and I had been even more careful since he passed. I had about $47,000 in savings, most of it from selling the boat James never got to retire with and some investments that had done better than expected. I could do it. I could help my son. I started sending him $2,800 on the 1st of every month, wire transfer, because he said it was easier that way, faster, more reliable than checks. 3 months became 6. 6 became a year. "Mom, you a lifesaver," he'd say when he called, which wasn't often. "We're almost through this. Vanessa's business is picking up. I'm due for a raise soon." I stopped going to the monthly lunches at church. I told the ladies I was tired, which wasn't entirely a lie. I started buying the day-old bread from the grocery store and learned to make soup stretch across 3 dinners instead of 2. Small sacrifices. That's what you do for family. By the 2nd year, I'd gone through most of the savings. I sold James' tools, the ones I'd been keeping in the garage because I couldn't bear to let 'em go. A man from Craigslist bought 'em for $800, loaded 'em into his truck, and drove away with the last physical pieces of my husband's hands. I used that money for the mortgage, too. Richard called less often. When he did, Vanessa was usually in the background, her voice bright and sharp, talking about client meetings and yoga retreats and some restaurant they'd just discovered. I never asked about the raise. I never asked about Vanessa's business. I just kept sending the money, because what else could I do? He was my son, and you don't abandon your children when they're struggling, even when the struggle looks different than you imagined. This past October, my hot water heater died. The plumber said it would be $1,400 to replace. I didn't have it. I'd sent that month's mortgage payment 3 days earlier. I heated water on the stove for a week, boiling kettles and pouring them into the tub, washing my hair in the kitchen sink like I was a pioneer woman in some black and white photograph. The church secretary, Linda, noticed I'd stopped putting anything in the collection plate. She pulled me aside after service one Sunday, her hand warm on my elbow. "Dorothy, are you all right? If you need anything—" "I'm fine," I smiled the way I'd learned to smile when people asked questions I couldn't answer honestly. "Just being careful with money. You know how it is." She didn't know. Nobody did. I finally borrowed money from my younger sister, Carol, who lives in Spokane. Told her it was for some dental work. She sent me a check for $1,500 and a note that said, "Pay me back whenever, sis, no rush." I got the hot water heater fixed and felt guilty every time I took a warm shower. Then came the invitation. Richard called 2 weeks before Christmas, his voice cheerful in that performative way that meant Vanessa was listening. "Mom, we want you to come spend Christmas with us. Vanessa's making a whole thing. She's really excited." Something in my chest unclenched slightly. Maybe things were better. Maybe he'd gotten that raise, and this would be the Christmas where he told me I didn't need to send money anymore, where he thanked me and promised to pay me back when he could. I drove to Boise on Christmas Eve, my 12-year-old Honda making a sound it hadn't made before, something grinding and unhappy under the hood. I ignored it, the same way I'd been ignoring a lot of things. Their house looked like something from a magazine, white lights dripping from the eaves, a wreath on the door that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Through the window, I could see a Christmas tree that reached the ceiling, covered in ornaments that matched, that coordinated, that looked nothing like the mismatched collection James and I had accumulated over 40 years of marriage. Vanessa answered the door in cashmere, her smile wide and glossy. "Dorothy, Merry Christmas! Come in, let me take your coat." She said my name the way you'd say it to someone you'd just met, friendly but distant, even though I'd known her for 5 years. The house smelled like expensive candles and something baking that wasn't from a box. Richard appeared from the kitchen, gave me a quick hug that felt more like a greeting than affection. "Merry Christmas, Mom. How was the drive?" "Fine," I said, because what else was I supposed to say? That my car was dying? That I'd had to choose between getting it serviced and sending this month's mortgage payment? I'd chosen the mortgage, like always. Dinner was beautiful. Turkey and roasted vegetables and some kind of salad with ingredients I didn't recognize. Vanessa talked about her business, how they'd landed 3 major clients this quarter, how she was thinking about hiring an assistant. Richard talked about work, about his promotion, about the bonus he'd gotten in November. Promotion, bonus. I set my fork down carefully, my hand steady, even though something was crumbling inside my chest. "That's wonderful, honey," I said, my voice even. "I'm so proud of you." Nobody mentioned the mortgage. Nobody mentioned the 3 years of $2,800 arriving in their account like clockwork, winter and summer, through my own struggles and my own silence. We opened presents after dinner. Vanessa gave me a scented candle in a flavor called Winter Woods and a calendar with pictures of Idaho landscapes. Richard gave me a fleece blanket, still in the plastic bag from the store. I gave them what I always gave them, a check, this time for $500, money I'd scraped together from my grocery budget and the small amount I'd been setting aside for new tires. Vanessa's smile brightened. "Oh, Dorothy, you shouldn't have, but thank you, this is so generous." Richard kissed my cheek. "Thanks, Mom, you're the best." I stayed in their guest room, which doubled as Vanessa's storage space for her business supplies. Boxes of promotional materials stacked against one wall, a rack of sample products along another. I lay in the bed and stared at the ceiling and wondered when exactly I had become invisible. Christmas morning came cold and bright. I woke early, made coffee in their gleaming kitchen with their expensive machine, and started making cinnamon rolls from scratch because that's what I'd always done on Christmas morning, even when there was no one to make them for. Richard came down first, already dressed in clothes that looked new. Vanessa followed 20 minutes later, her hair perfect even though she'd just woken up. We had breakfast. The cinnamon rolls were good, even though nobody said so. Vanessa checked her phone 3 times. Richard mentioned they had dinner plans with Vanessa's parents at 2. "Oh," I said, calculating how long the drive home would take, whether my car would make it. I should probably head out soon then. "Before you go," Richard said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out an envelope, set it on the table in front of me. For a moment, something lifted in my chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe he'd written me a check. Maybe he was about to say he didn't need the mortgage help anymore. Maybe... "Just a little something extra for Christmas," Richard said, smiling that smile that didn't reach his eyes. I opened the envelope. $200 bills, crisp and new. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I carried inside my body and nursed through fevers and driven to soccer practice and college and his wedding, this man whose mortgage I'd been paying for 3 years while I boiled water on my stove and borrowed money from my sister and let the church ladies think I was just being frugal. "Thank you," I said quietly. "This is very thoughtful." I folded the envelope and put it in my purse. I hugged them both goodbye, promised to drive carefully, and walked out to my dying car in the driveway of their beautiful house. I made it home by noon. The house was cold because I'd turned the heat down to save money. I sat at my kitchen table, still wearing my coat, and took out the envelope. $200. I thought about the hot water heater, the groceries I'd stopped buying, the church collection plate that stayed empty while my dollars went elsewhere, the tools I'd sold, the last pieces of James I'd let go of so my son could keep his house. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I opened my laptop, the old one that took 3 minutes to start up, and logged into my bank account. 3 years of wire transfers, all documented. $2,800 sent on the 1st of every month, sometimes on the 30th if the 1st fell on a weekend. January through December 2022, all 12 months. January through December 2023, all 12 months. January through November 2024, 11 months so far. $100,800 total. I sat back and looked at that number for a long time. Then I opened a new document and started typing. It took me 3 hours to write everything down, every conversation where Richard had said it was temporary, every time I'd asked when things might improve and he'd changed the subject, every mention of Vanessa's business picking up, of his position getting more secure, of things being almost back to normal. I documented the hot water heater, the borrowed money from Carol, the tools I'd sold, the day-old bread and the 3-meal soups I'd stopped attending. I printed it all out, every page, and put it in a folder. Then I called my sister. "Carol," I said when she answered, "I need to tell you something, and I need your help." She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Dorothy," she finally said, her voice tight with something between anger and heartbreak, "why didn't you tell me?" "Because he's my son," I said simply, "and I thought I was helping." "You were being used." The word hung in the air between us. Used. I'd thought a lot of words over the past 3 years. Sacrifice, support, temporary help, but I'd never let myself think that one. "Carol," continued, "I have some money saved. Not a lot, but enough to help you if you need it. Real help, not a loan you'll feel guilty about." "I don't want your money. I want my dignity back." "Then what are you going to do?" I looked at the folder on my table, at 3 years of evidence compiled in careful rows. "I'm going to stop, and I'm going to tell him why." That night I wrote an email. I wrote it and rewrote it and wrote it again until the words felt right, felt true, felt like something I could send without my hand shaking. "Richard, this email is to inform you that I will no longer be sending the monthly mortgage payment. Effective January 1st, 2025, you will need to make other arrangements for your housing costs. Over the past 3 years, I have sent you $100,800. This was presented to me as temporary assistance during a difficult financial period. You have since received a promotion and a bonus. Your wife's business has acquired major clients, and yet the assistance has continued without discussion of repayment or end date. I am 72 years old and living on a fixed income. In order to help you, I have exhausted most of my savings, sold your father's tools and other possessions, borrowed money from Carol while claiming it was for other expenses, lived without hot water for a week because I couldn't afford repairs, stopped participating in social activities due to cost. You gave me $200 for Christmas. I have been giving you $2,800 every month for 3 years. I need you to understand something. I would have continued helping you if you'd been honest with me, if you'd told me you still needed help, if you acknowledged what I was sacrificing, if you'd shown any awareness that your financial recovery was built on my financial ruin. I would have found a way. But you didn't. You smiled and talked about promotions and bonuses and new clients while I stood in your beautiful kitchen making cinnamon rolls, because that's what mothers do, and felt myself disappearing. The money is done. I won't be sending it anymore, and I won't be coming for holidays until I feel like a mother again instead of an ATM who makes breakfast. I love you. I will always love you, but I deserve better than this. Mom." I read it through one more time. Then I attached the spreadsheet showing every payment, every date, every dollar. And I pressed send. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in 3 years, even though I knew the weight hadn't really lifted yet. I knew what was coming. The phone would ring, Richard would call, probably angry, definitely defensive. There would be accusations of blindsiding him, of not communicating, of making a big deal out of nothing. But for the first time in 3 years, I slept through the night without waking up at 3 a.m. doing mental math about bills and budgets and which parts of my life I could trim away next. The phone rang at 8:47 the next morning. Richard's name on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Mom," his voice was tight, "what the hell was that email?" "It was the truth," I said calmly. "Which part did you have trouble with?" You can't just cut us off like this. We have bills. We have—" "So do I interrupted, my voice still quiet, but harder now. "I have bills too, Richard. I've had them this whole time. You said you wanted to help. I did help for 3 years, and you never once said thank you, never once acknowledged what it was costing me, never once told me the truth about your financial situation. We were going to pay you back. When?" Silence. "When, Richard? After the promotion you got 6 months ago? After the bonus you mentioned at Christmas? After Vanessa landed those major clients?" "This isn't fair, Mom. You're making it sound like we were taking advantage of you." I looked out my kitchen window at the snow beginning to fall, soft and quiet, covering everything in white. "Weren't you?" I asked. The silence this time was longer, heavier. "I can't believe you're doing this," he finally said. "Right after Christmas, you're really going to put us in this position?" Something in me went very still, very cold. "Richard," I said quietly, Do you have any idea how many nights I sat at this table trying to figure out how to make my money stretch far enough to cover your mortgage and my electric bill? Do you know that I sold your father's tools, the ones I'd been keeping because they still smelled like him, because I needed $800 for your house? Mom, do you know that I borrowed money from Aunt Carol and lied about why I needed it because I was ashamed to admit I was choosing your mortgage over my own hot water? You never said. I shouldn't have had to say it, Richard. You should have asked. You should have checked. You should have cared enough to notice that your mother was disappearing while you remodeled your kitchen and took weekend trips and gave me $200 like I was a charity case. His breathing was sharp on the other end of the line. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want you to say anything, I told him. I want you to figure out your own mortgage. I want you to take care of your own family. And I want you to think about what kind of son you've been to me these past 3 years. I hung up before he could respond. The next call came from Vanessa. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that I deleted without listening to. My sister called that afternoon. "How are you holding up?" Carol asked. "I'm okay," I said, and realized it was true. I'm actually okay. Good, because I talked to my friend Patricia, the one who's a lawyer. She says if you wanted to pursue repayment. I don't, I said quickly. I'm not taking him to court, Carol. I just wanted to stop. He owes you over $100,000. I know, but I gave it willingly, even if he took it badly. I don't want his money. I want my life back. Carol was quiet for a moment. You're a better person than I am. I'm just a tired person, and I'm done being tired. January 1st came and went. I didn't send the mortgage payment. For the first time in 3 years, $2,800 stayed in my account. I stared at my bank balance and felt something unfamiliar. Possibility. I paid Carol back for the hot water heater, bought new tires for my car, put $50 in the church collection plate, and went to lunch with the ladies afterwards, letting them treat me to coffee and dessert, telling them I'd just been feeling under the weather but was better now. Richard didn't call again. Neither did Vanessa. 3 weeks later, I got a text message. "We figured out the mortgage. We're fine, but you really hurt us, Mom." I read it twice, feeling the familiar pull of guilt, the old instinct to apologize and smooth things over and make myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. Then I deleted it. In February, I got a letter from Richard, an actual letter, handwritten on nice paper, the kind of thing he hadn't done since he was a child and I made him write thank you notes for birthday presents. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said and about what I didn't say. You're right. I didn't ask how you were doing. I didn't think about what you were giving up to help us. I just took the money and told myself it was okay because you offered, because you're my mom and that's what moms do. But that's not what moms do. That's not what anyone should do. Vanessa and I talked to a financial counselor. We've restructured some things. We can handle the mortgage now. We should have been able to handle it 2 years ago, if I'm being honest. I just didn't want to make the hard choices, so I let you make them for me. I don't know if you want to see me right now. I understand if you don't, but I need you to know that I'm sorry, really, truly sorry, not because you called me out, but because I should have done better. You deserved better. I love you, and I'm going to find a way to pay you back, even if it takes me the rest of my life. Richard." I folded the letter tearfully and put it in the drawer where I kept important things, birth certificates and Social Security cards and the deed to this house. I didn't call him, not yet, because forgiveness isn't something you rush and trust isn't something you rebuild with a single letter. But I kept the letter, and that felt like a start. Spring came early that year. The snow melted, crocuses pushed up through the wet earth, and I planted tomatoes in my garden for the first time since James died, remembering how he used to complain about the rabbits eating them, but secretly enjoyed the battle. Carol visited in March, staying for a long weekend. We didn't talk much about Richard, but she noticed the changes in me, the way I held myself straighter, the way I smiled more easily. "You look lighter," she said on her last day, hugging me goodbye on my front porch. "I feel lighter," I admitted, like I put down something heavy I didn't realize I'd been carrying. That's what dignity feels like, when you stop giving it away to people who don't value it. After she left, I stood on my porch for a long time, listening to the birds, feeling the spring sun warm on my face. My phone buzzed, a text from Richard. "Mom, I know you might not be ready to talk, but Vanessa and I wanted you to know we made the first payment toward paying you back. It's not much, $500, but it's a start. We set up an automatic transfer, first of every month, for as long as it takes." I looked at my bank account. There it was, $500, deposited that morning. It would take 17 years to pay back what I'd given them. I'd be 89 years old. But that wasn't really the point, was it? The point was that they were trying. The point was that my son had finally looked at what he'd done and felt shame instead of entitlement. The point was that I had asked for respect and he was learning how to give it. I typed out a response. "Thank you. Not just for the money, but for understanding why it matters." His reply came quickly. "Can I call you this weekend? I'd like to hear your voice." I thought about it for a long time. Then, "Sunday afternoon, after church. I'll call at 2. "Okay." I put the phone down and went inside to make myself lunch. Chicken soup, the good kind made from scratch, enough for several days. I wasn't trying to stretch it anymore. I was just cooking the way I like to cook, the way that made my house smell like home. That Sunday, Richard called at exactly 2:00. "Hi, Mom." His voice was careful, humble in a way I hadn't heard since he was small and afraid he'd done something wrong. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, and heard him exhale with relief at the endearment. We talked for an hour, about small things mostly, the weather, his work, my garden plans. We didn't talk about money or mortgages or Christmas. We weren't ready for that yet. But at the end of the call, he said, "I miss you, Mom. I really miss you." "I miss you too," I said honestly, "but I don't miss feeling invisible." "You won't be invisible anymore," he promised. "I'm going to do better. I swear I'm going to do better." "I know," I said, and I meant it. After we hung up, I sat in James's old armchair by the window and watched the evening light fade across my garden. The tomato plants were still small, just starting to climb their stakes, but they were growing steadily, reaching toward the sun. I thought about the Christmas envelope, those $200 presented as generosity while I'd been bleeding myself dry for them. I thought about the moment when I realized I had to stop, had to speak, had to choose myself, even if it meant disappointing my son. It had been the hardest thing I'd done in 8 years of widowhood, and it had been the most necessary. The phone rang again. Carol. "How did it go?" she asked. "Good," I said. "Different, but good." "Are you going to forgive him?" I watched a robin land on my garden fence, its red breast bright against the weathered wood. "I already have," I said quietly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to how things were." "What does it mean then?" I thought about it, about the weight I'd carried and put down, about the $500 in my account and the 17 years of payments ahead, about my son's voice saying, "I'm going to do better," like a prayer and a promise. "It means we start over," I said finally, with truth this time and boundaries and both of us doing the work. "I'm proud of you, sis." "I'm proud of me too," I said and realized I meant it. After we said goodbye, I made myself a cup of tea and took it out to the porch. The evening was cool but not cold, the kind of spring night that promises summer isn't far away. I thought about James, about how he used to sit out here with me after dinner, not saying much, just being together in the comfortable silence of a long marriage. I did okay, I told him, speaking to the air, to the memory, to whatever part of him still existed somewhere beyond my sight. The wind picked up slightly, rustling through the new leaves on the trees, and I chose to hear it as his answer. I went inside as the stars started to appear, washed my teacup, locked the doors, turned off the lights. Before bed, I checked my email one last time. There was a message from Richard sent just minutes ago. "Mom, I've been sitting here trying to figure out what to say, and I keep coming back to this. You taught me how to walk, how to read, how to tie my shoes and drive a car and be a decent person. But you also taught me something these past few months, something I should have learned a long time ago. You taught me that love doesn't mean accepting whatever people give you. You taught me that respect has to go both ways, and you taught me that the strongest thing a person can do is say, 'Enough.' I'm sorry it took me so long to see what you were doing for us. I'm sorry I let you suffer while I lived comfortably. I'm sorry I gave you $200 like it was generosity when you'd been giving me everything. I can't undo the past 3 years, but I can try to be better now. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when you had every right to. I love you, Mom. Richard." I read it twice, 3 times until I'd memorized the words. Then I closed my laptop and got into bed, pulling James's old quilt up around my shoulders, the one I'd quilted myself 40 years ago when we were young and thought we had forever. I didn't have forever. None of us do. But I had today and tomorrow and a son who was finally learning what it meant to see his mother as a person, not just a source of unconditional support. I had $500 arriving every month, not because I needed it to survive, but because my son was learning accountability. I had tomato plants growing in my garden and church ladies who smiled when they saw me and a sister who would drive through a blizzard if I needed her. I had hot water and new tires and money in the bank that was mine to spend as I chose. And I had something I'd almost lost, but had fought my way back to, my dignity. Outside, an owl called into the darkness. Inside, I closed my eyes and felt myself settling into sleep the way you settle into warm water, the way you settle into home. I was 72 years old. I'd been invisible, overlooked, taken for granted, but I wasn't anymore. And that, I thought, as sleep pulled me under, was worth more than all the mortgage payments in the world. If this story resonated with you, please don't hesitate to like this video. Join the family by subscribing to this channel so we can share more with each other. Please leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from.